Hi everyone, welcome to Learn Python. In the previous video, we have talked about using for loops in Python. We have seen different scenarios where we were able to use for loops through a sequence of number or a string, maybe list or dictionary. We have also talked about break, continue and pass statement in the next video. In this tutorial, we are talking about using while loops. Basically, loops are important when we need to repeat a task multiple times to reduce the effort. We don't want to write hundreds of lines of code every time, so we can use loops efficiently so that just in few lines of code we are able to do something iteratively or repeatedly, right? That we have seen in for loop as well. But there is a difference between for loop and while loop. For loop we are using when we need to do a definite number of iteration. If you remember correctly, we have used for loop for something like that, for I in, and there is some string here. For each member of that string, we want to do some task here, whatever statement we have defined here. So here the number of elements in that string is finite. So we want to repeat this task finite number of times. Same we have seen if we are using range function. So whatever we are writing, even if I am writing range 10,000, then too it is a finite number that we want to perform this task 10,000 times or whatever we are writing here, right? And enumerate function also we have seen, or we have seen the list or dictionary, but all those are having finite number of elements. So if we are sure that we want to perform a task for each element of that particular list or dictionary or that function, then we use for loop. While if we want to iterate something for indefinite number of times, we are not sure what is the count up until when we want to do that, then we need to use while loop. So basically iteration are of two type, definite and indefinite. So while loop is used when we are not sure about the number of iteration. We will here see some basic examples of while loops, and in continuation of that we will also discuss break, continue and pass using while loop. So let's discuss our first example. Here we have defined I equal to 1. Some variable we have initialized I equal to 1. So we know that I is a numerical variable and its value is 1. Now we want to perform a task. What we want to perform is, first let me clear all outputs. So suppose we want to print some numbers, but we want to print numbers up to a particular number, for example 5 or 10 or something like that. Although we can use for loop also for this particular example, but I am showing you how the syntax of while loop work. For while loop, usually we write here while. This is the keyword, so when you hit enter it will turn blue. Here you write some condition, and if the condition is true, whatever condition, it will assess if the condition is true. Here you write colon, and after that you hit enter, and when you are writing in the code block, I'm currently writing in the text block, you need to give indentation here. As we have discussed in the previous videos, as per PEPH, you need to give 4 space. In Colab, the default indentation is, space is 2 space, and we can change that also. We have discussed all these things in the previous video. And here you write some statement which you want to execute if the condition is true. This is a very simple syntax here for while loop, and let me show you how that works. So here we have defined I equal to 1. Now I'm using while keyword and I'm putting a condition here, I is less than 5. So it will check if the value of I is less than 5. It will execute whatever statement I'm writing inside the loop body, and it will keep on running until this condition is satisfied, right? So initially I is equal to 1. Obviously this condition is satisfied. So I'm asking it to print I, and notice here is the indentation. So print I means it will print that particular value of I. And here what I am doing is I am reassigning the value of I. I am updating the value of I. And what does it mean? I am writing I plus equal to 1. It is basically assignment operator. We can also write it like this, I equal to I plus 1. Those who are from math might be finding it silly that how can be I equal to I plus 1. But it is a way of writing in programming language that we are updating the value of I. So new value of I would be previous value of I plus 1. But in most of the programming languages, instead of updating it like this, we use assignment operator, which you have just seen here. We can simply write it like this, I plus equal to 1. It simply means I equal to I plus 1. And this is nothing but assignment operator, which we have not talked explicitly in our operators video, because it's just another name of assigning the object, right? So basically, after I have printed the value of I am updating the value of I to be incremented by 1. So now my I will become 2. Now I is 2. Again we will go back to the while loop, because it is a loop. It has to run every time until the condition is satisfied. So again it will check whether 2 is less than 5. Yes, it is less than 5. So it will print that value of I, which is 2. Again it will update. Now I is equal to 3. And again it will check I is less than 5, it will print, and so on. So it will keep on printing until I is less than 5, means up to I equal to 4, right? When it has printed I equal to 4 and it has updated the value of I is now 5. And after that, when it checks the condition, this condition is not true now, and it comes out of the loop. So basically it should print the output 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's check that. So this is the output which we were expecting. I hope there is no trouble understanding this example. You just need to check the condition, you need to execute this statement, and because we are updating the value of I, you need to update the value of I and again go back to the loop, again check the condition, and so on. And the loop has to repeat until the condition is met, right? And if I here write the number 10,000, so loop has to repeat until 10,000, whatever number I have written here, right? Now, are you thinking something? What if the condition is I is greater than 0? Instead, here if I write the condition I is greater than 0. So I initially is also greater than 0. I equal to 1 means I is greater than 0. And if we are updating the value of I to be added with 1, it is always going to be greater than 0. In that case, the loop will never stop. It will keep on running, right? And you need to find a way of how to stop that loop. We will see one example later on, and that would be truly indefinite loop. So we need to think how to avoid those kind of loops. Let's see another example here. So here n equal to 5, and what we are checking here is, this time we are checking whether this value is greater than 0. And let me just write here in the separate flow any number. And if we are checking any condition, you can just play around and write any condition which you want. If you are checking if n is greater than 0, or you can start with if n is greater than 2 or whatever. Now what you are doing here is, before printing, you are updating the value of n. Notice the difference. Here you are updating the value of n first and then you are printing. To update the value of n, you are again using the assignment operator n minus equal to 1. It means n is equal to n minus 1. You are decreasing the value of n by 1. And now you are printing the value of n. So you will print the updated value of n. And you might have guessed what would be the output. If you are doing it for the first time, I would ask you to just pause the video and think what should be the output before you run the code. I'm writing here for absolute beginner. If you find it difficult, initially n is equal to 5. We are checking this condition, n is greater than 0, and the condition is met here. Condition is true. So what we are doing here? We are doing n is equal to 5 minus 1. So now it is 4. And we are printing the value of n. So if we print 4, we are getting the output 4. So first output here is 4. Now the value of n is 4. Again we are going to the loop here. And we are checking whether 4 is greater than 0. Again it is true. And it is true. So we are again updating the value of n. So now this time value of n is equal to 4 minus 1, 3. And this time we are printing this updated value of n. So our output is 3. Again, this updated value of n, and we are checking the condition. Again, because 3 is greater than 0, we are doing 3 minus 1 is 2. We are printing this, so output is 2. Next again we are doing output is 1. Next again, next time when we are checking, next time when we are updating the value of n, we get 1 minus 1 is 0. And when we check the condition, whether 0 is greater than 0, it is false, because 0 is not greater than 0, right? So this time we are not able to execute the condition, so loop is finished. So this should be the output. Let's check the output of this code. Okay, yeah, 4, 3, 2, 1 and 0. I hope you got it. Now as we have seen in the example of for loop, similarly in while loops also we can combine else, We can combine if else, we can combine while loop and for loop and nested while loops. We can do all those sort of things. We can even combine it with break, continue and pass kind of a statement. Here in this example, this is the same loop which we have executed, and what I have done is I have just added some else condition here. Notice that there is no if statement, there is just else condition. So what we are asking it to do, while n is greater than 0, update the value of n minus equal to 1, print the value of n, that's it. And else, otherwise means when this condition is false, then you need to print loop done. So instead of just coming out of the loop, you need to print a statement for us that is loop done. And when we run that, we will get the same output, but there would be a statement in the end which is loop done. So you see 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 as we have expected, and finally loop done. This statement is printed. And again, if you want to stop the loop in between, for example, if you want to print the number in continuation but you want to stop the loop when a particular condition is met, then you can use break statement. If you are new to break statement, I would recommend you to watch the previous video on break statement for more clarity. So what here we are doing is, I am taking the same example n equal to 5, and here we are writing while n is greater than 0. So we are starting with this condition. Whenever this condition is true, what we need to do is we need to update the value of I. So n minus equal to 1, and we need to print the value of n. We also need to check here if n equal to something, for example 2. So whenever n equal to 2, we want to break the loop. We don't want to continue with the loop, right? So what we can do is if condition, and remember whenever we write if condition, so if some condition, again colon mark, and again we need to indent the code. So notice the indentation here. I'm writing here break, right? And this break is for this if condition. Fine. And finally, if you want, you can do some print statement or something like that. Otherwise, you can end up with like this. Or it's your choice if you want to print this n before this if condition, or if you want to print it after this condition. So let me put it in the last to make it more clear. Okay. So this is my while loop. And let me tell you again that I'm checking this condition. Whenever n is greater than 0, I'm updating the value of n. Then whenever the value of n becomes exactly equal to 2, when I'm decreasing 5, 4, 3, 2, whenever it becomes 2, I'm breaking the loop. I don't want to do anything. I want to come outside of the loop. Otherwise, I'm printing the value of n, right? So let me run this. I hope you are able to now guess the output. If you are not able to guess the output, there is no hurry. Just pause the video, take your pen and try to write out what should be your output. Take your time to understand the concept. It will help you in the long run. So yes, we are getting 4, 3. We are not getting anything after that, because let me show you what happens is we have started with 5, because initially value of n is equal to 5, and when we have checked, because 5 is greater than 0, so this condition is true. So we are updating the value of n. We need to execute these things in the sequence. So now the value of n becomes 5 minus 1, which is 4. Now we are not printing this value as of now. We are checking this condition. If n equal to 2, because this condition is not met. So we come here and we print the value of n. So we print 4, we get the output 4. Next what happens, this is my value of n. Again we go here to this statement and we check for this. So again now my n is equal to 4. We check 4 is greater than 0. This condition is true. We come inside the loop and now we update the value. It becomes 3. We check for the if condition, because the if condition is not satisfied here again. So we are printing and we are getting the output 3. Next what happens? Now my value of n is equal to 3. So we check, yes, 3 is again greater than 0. So the condition is true. Now we update the value of n. So this time n becomes 3 minus 1, that is 2. Now we check this condition, because this condition is now met. N is exactly equal to true. So what we need to do is we need to break the loop. And break the loop means do nothing, come out of the loop. So here is the output. I hope you are getting. the concept of for, while, if, else, break, continue, pass, you should be able to relate and combine those together. So go slow if you are doing it for the first time. Now let's look at another example. Suppose you want to print all the values except 2. So instead of breaking your loop at 2, you just want to skip that particular value n equal to 2 and you want to continue printing rest of the values. So I hope you have guessed it right. What can be done? Yeah, we can use continue. So in the same example, let me show you how we can use continue. So just copying the example and we will just change one line of code here. So instead of break, we will use continue. That's it. So what it will do is, it will continue the loop. Just for this particular condition, when n is exactly equal to 2, it will skip printing and for rest of the values which comes after that, it will keep on printing. So we will get the output 4, 3, 1 and 0. Notice we are not getting 2 here, and I hope you are not worried about why we are getting 0, because we are checking this condition. So when we have 1 here, 1 is greater than 0, we are updating the value, it is becoming 0 and it is printing that value. I hope there is no confusion. So these are some more example. Yeah, I just want to show you one more thing here, that in Colab there is a short trick also to intend or to unintend the code block. For example, this is my code block and I want to shift it to the right. So I can select whatever lines I want to shift. I can select those particular lines of code and I can use control and curly braces from my keyboard for shifting to the right, closing curly braces, and shifting to the left, opening curly braces. So let me show you. I'm doing it from my keyboard. So I get this kind of indentation or I get this kind. And let me show you, if the code itself is correct, but I'm using one indentation, I will get an error. So sometimes when you read something from somewhere and you copy paste in your own ID, you get this kind of error. And notice that sometimes the error is self-explanatory, indentation error, unexpected intent, and it is showing you where the indentation is unexpected in this line of code. So the entire code block for this while loop is shifted to the right. We need to correct it. So again, I am using control and curly brace to do it correctly, right? I'm just showing you these keyboard shortcut because sometimes we need it, and because these are very simple loops, but when we write lengthy loops, we need to be careful about indentation and sometimes we need to correct it later on also. Now, one thing is, you can also write the while loop in one line of code. I usually avoid these kind of statement because for me this is little confusing, but you can write it like this: while this is the condition and colon, after that you are writing whatever you want to do. So you are updating the value of n and semicolon, and you are printing the value of n. So whatever statement you are doing, you can write all those statements separated by semicolon. So this will work too, but for me it is little confusing, so I avoid these kind of statement. I was also talking about when you use while loops, you need to be careful. It is very easy to enter into the loop which never terminates, right? It just takes up your system's memory and it keeps on running. The script never ends. So you need to avoid those kind of loops. You need to be careful that somehow at some point the condition becomes false and the loop stops automatically. For example, here I am writing while true, print this. So while true is always going to be true, right? So this condition is never going to fail. So it is going to keep on printing foo every time. And as we have talked about another example, if I am saying that n is equal to 5 and I am here saying while n is greater than 0, print n, whatever, print hello, whatever we are doing, right? Now this loop is also indefinite loop. So if we run these kind of loop, I can show you any one example. It will keep on running. It will never stop. You can see the output is, it is printing 5, 5, 5, 5 and it is still running. So there is no way it will stop automatically. So you need to interrupt this loop in between to avoid your system from crashing, right? For that, there are some shortcuts, maybe Control C work in some of the IDs. I'm using Colab. So what I can do is, it's running. I can double click here to interrupt the execution. Or I can, I think, use Control MI. It is showing me. Yeah, so I have double click. You see it is now in red. and it has stopped working now, and we see that keyboard interrupt, and that's why it has stopped printing the output. So sometimes by mistake you have written loop which is not stopping. You need to find a way to stop that loop in your particular ID. You can even go here and reset the runtime in Colab. So there are various options depending upon the ID. That's enough about while loop. In the next tutorial, we will talk about writing functions. Thank you for watching.